Greetings. Welcome to today's special Pride edition of Farhang Connect, and thank you for joining us from across the globe to be here. I am Alireza Ardakhani, Executive Director of Farhang Foundation here in Los Angeles. We are a member-supported, non-political, non-religious, not-for-profit organization with the sole mission to celebrate and promote Iranian art and culture for the benefit of the community at large. Today, we're excited to welcome our special guest, culinary superstar and author Andy Baraghani, to discuss his new New York Times bestselling cookbook, The Cook You Want to Be. Andy began his culinary career at the age of 17, when he started working at Alice Waters' legendary restaurant, Chez Panisse. From there, he continued his training in some of the top restaurants around the country, including Gary Danko, Corton, and Estella. By the time he was 21, he was running a monthly pop-up featuring seasonal Iranian food outside of his Brooklyn apartment. In 2015, he joined Bon Appetit magazine as a senior food editor, where he developed recipes and hosted a regular video series for the brand. His work has been featured in Saveur, the Financial Times, the BBC, and the Gather Journal. Today, Andy will be joined in conversation by the fabulous Naz Deravian, a James Beard Award-nominated author of Bottom of the Pot, Persian Recipes and Stories. She is a recipient of the IACP Julia Child First Book Award for Gastronomy and the Culinary Arts. Bottom of the Pot was the 2018 Food 52 Piglet Award winner and also a Taste Canada Gold Award winner for Best Regional Cookbook. Naz has been published in The Atlantic, the Los Angeles Times, the San Francisco Chronicle, Saveur, O Magazine, Eating Well, and Monte Cristo Magazine. She has also been profiled in Bon Appetit and is a regular contributor to the New York Times. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming today's esteemed guests, Andy Baraghani and Naz Deravian.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome, Andy.
Hi, Alireza John. Hi, Naz.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome, Naz.
Thank you.
We're so delighted to have you both here, and thank you for joining us today. We're excited for this talk, and I will step back and let Naz take it from here.
Thank you, Alireza, and thank you to Farhang Foundation for having us today, and thank you for everyone who's joining, perhaps from across the globe. And I can't tell you how excited I am for this talk, to be here with Andy, who is, I really think of as kin, as a little brother. Andy, I met you for the first time in person at Bon Appetit for the podcast when I was touring with my book, and I think that was back in 2018. And yeah, I know.
Well, simpler times.
Different times. Different times. We hugged, we sat close, all of that stuff. You drank a lot of water, I remember, always taking care of yourself. And I have to tell you, it was one of the best interviews, talks I've ever had. It always stays with me. And I got so many messages from people who listened to that podcast expressing the same thing. And I think it had, first of all, like I said, it was like speaking to a family member, to my little brother, but also there's something about speaking to someone about, let's say, Iranian cuisine, who fully gets it and who knows what you're talking about. And there's a shorthand. So I'm very, very excited to be here with you today and to return the favor and to chat some more.
Thank you. This was a dream of mine, truly. I knew that from the get-go, when my book came out, I'm like, I would love to do a talk with Naz. And I feel like we had such a wonderful conversation back in 2018 of the podcast. And I am very grateful that you're returning the favor. It means the world, truly.
So let's jump right in. I am so excited about this book, The Cook You Want to Be. And right off the bat, when I got it, that the first two lines of the introduction, I thought were some of the best in a cookbook that I've ever read. The first paragraph, but first of all, those first two lines. And if you don't mind, do you want to read it or should I read it?
I do have the book handy, so I'm happy to do. I'm happy to read.
Please read that first paragraph because I want to take off from there.
Okay. This got me off guard, everybody, but I will.
Told you to be ready.
Yes. I really tried not to be a cook. I mean, this little gay Persian boy imagined he was going to be the next Al Pacino. Then I thought I might be an anthropology professor. After I ghosted that idea, I put in a couple of years in the fashion world, but grew tired of the lack of food in that industry. I can continue, but I'll leave it at that.
So let's start from there. What happened to the next Al Pacino?
I think, I feel very, very grateful, and I have been reminded of this throughout my life, and I really have never forgotten. I have always loved food from a very early age, and in the introduction, the first photo within the introduction is a photo of me with the Fisher-Price kitchen. I think I was maybe 3 years old. And I think a lot of us have this deep love for food, but it's very much from a rudimentary standpoint when you're at that age. It's the act of eating and the pleasure that brings you, those flavors. And I think as I kind of got older, it became obviously a deeper curiosity, and I was more interested in not just those flavors and dishes, but actually the act of cooking. I think I will read actually a line that in the book that it sums it up better than I think I could do it at this very moment. And it's about my kind of the tension between wanting to be working in the food space professionally and not. Now I'm going back, see? It's actually right after the first paragraph. So just because you love something deeply, I thought, doesn't mean you should make it your career. I think I feared that if I worked in kitchens, the job would suck the joy out of what was always more than a hobby, more like an obsession to me. Thing is, I don't remember a time when I was not obsessed with food. I remember going on a family trip to Paris when my sister and I were kids, and we were each allowed to get one souvenir. She wanted a pair of leathery, strappy black stilettos. I wanted a fancy restaurant meal with as many courses as I could get. I got 5. I think it's something that I thought that if I ever really entered professionally, it would, like I said, suck the joy out of it. I think I wanted to kind of keep it private, intimate. Obviously, that didn't happen. It did end up becoming very much a career that I'm very happy about and grateful for, that now I've been working in this food space for 15 plus years. And truly no regrets. I can recite Al Pacino lines. I still have them memorized, but I certainly, I think I'm happy with the pivot.
And I think you speak for many Iranians out there. I think there are many Iranians out there who did want to be Al Pacino, myself included. And I did meet him and I told him that too.
Love that.
So you mentioned the Fisher-Price kitchen. Do you remember what kind of food, what did you make? Like, what was the play that was going on with that little kitchen? Was it Iranian food? Was it, sandwiches, what you were eating at home or at school or daycare?
I think when I think of the foods that was really kind of had an impact on me at that age. I mean, that I grew up eating Iranian food every single day. I don't really remember eating non-Iranian food until I was maybe around 9 or 10. Maybe I ate that earlier, but I don't really remember that. And I think with the Fisher-Price kitchen, I have no idea what kind of experience was going on. I knew that after daycare and after kindergarten, I had a specific type of snack, and I don't know how I got away with it, but my mother's mother would always make me potatoes, just like they would just be fried potatoes cut up into little wedges and just like with plenty of salt. And that was my after school snack, which feels very indulgent when I think back. but it was a lot of Iranian dishes. I think of kufta as being one of the Iranian dishes that I really fell in love with very early on. I still love it. There's a version in the book, but I think I really was drawn to that food. I mean, that cuisine is so unique to me still to this day. There's nothing like it.
So what was the trajectory? Take us right up to when you got to Chez Panisse. So you're interested in food. You don't know if you want to make a career of it. And then you end up in the kitchen of Chez Panisse at a very, very young age.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, I think it really did start from more having this love for eating, and then it kind of increased. And when I was younger, I would watch television shows on PBS, Jacques Pepin, Julia Child, Martin Yan. But then I think, and I always loved going to kind of restaurants and obviously eating my mother's food and my family's food. But it was probably around 12 where I became a little bit more curious, where I was like, oh, nothing to write about. Believe me, it was bad experiments, like packaged top ramen, but I would put maybe cilantro or scallion or some chili flakes, nothing crazy. Or like shrimp was a very introductory kind of protein for me. And I would put maybe, also this tells you exactly where I grew up. It was like shrimp with like green goddess sauce, which is so Californian. Beets and citrus, certain things that were very much tells you the time and place of where I grew up in the Bay Area. But I think I started really having this fascination with restaurants and chefs from around the world. And I wasn't aware of Chez Panisse, to be honest. It was a family member. I remember my aunt and my uncle, they spoke about it and they mentioned it, that there's this very special place very close by to our home. And the woman behind it, she really started this kind of movement in the 70s. And her name's Alice Waters, and the restaurant's called Chez Panisse. And I don't know what, I look back and I think what really got me to want to go there. And part of it was also like, I was in a program that allowed me to kind of do an internship while I was in high school. But at the same time, I think, I don't know how to explain the kind of gutsiness I had. I thought there's nothing to lose when you're that young, it seems, there's very little to lose. And I think that there was maybe a level of not stubbornness, but I want to say curiosity. And this, it really was a kind of obsession. And so I went there, I remember one day, and I spoke with the co-chef, Beth Wells, who was the co-chef of the cafe. There's the restaurant downstairs in the cafe. And I told her, look, I'm in high school. I would love to work here. I could come on Fridays after school and Saturdays all day. Sundays, the restaurant was closed. And I said, I'll do anything you want. And I think I could see that she was a little confused. And she's like, how old are you? Like, you're in high school. How are you supposed to do this? And I think I was just very eager. I was eager and desperate to absorb as much knowledge as I could about this subject matter. I think it was like something I could not control. And it was innate. It really was. It wasn't, I don't know, thinking back, I don't know who that person is necessarily, because I feel like I'm a lot more logical. And as you get older, you almost, you overthink sometimes. But then I just kind of went for it, and they were very lovely. And what ended up happening was something I could never even imagine or wish for. It was beyond my wildest dreams. It was, I like to say that my family instilled a deep love for food, but it was Chez Panisse that provided the education, the foundation of really cooking in a way that has stuck with me throughout my life. So much of everything that I've been able to accomplish, or moments in my career, they always go back to Chez Panisse. It's somehow an individual place. They always go back to Chez. And that was 15 years ago. I happened to be in the Bay Area for the book tour 3 weeks ago, and I did a book signing and a pop-up there. And it was truly surreal to kind of walk that space that many years later. The smells were the exact same. the thoughtfulness, the care. It's such a unique space. And I've been lucky to work at a lot of restaurants, a lot of great restaurants. But there really is nowhere else like it. It's a very special place.
As an Iranian American, how did your family, and your first generation, right?
First generation, yeah.
How did your family feel about you taking on a job in a restaurant, in a very, highly esteemed restaurant, and then pursuing a career from there, getting on this trajectory to be in the food industry?
To be honest, I've never necessarily have asked my parents how they felt about it or feel about it. But I will say the reason why I probably have never asked, it's not because I don't care about their opinion. It's because my parents are maybe, I don't want to think like this because I hope a lot of parents are like them, but I probably, from what I've heard and from other Iranians, friends and other members of the community, that they are probably a bit of an anomaly, both of them. I think there are moments I could remember, whether it was about my career choices or my sexuality, it was very clear that what was very important to them, for both my sister and I, was that we were doing good work and that we were being good people and we were putting kind of good energy out there. I think that was more important to them than anything else. And it is so, there's a gentleness, because it's not to say that they don't have expectations of like myself or my sister, but I think there was, as long as you're putting good energy out there and it's fulfilling and you are learning and evolving, then, that's more than enough.
I think I can also speak the same for my parents, that I feel like perhaps now having heard, talking to other Iranians, that they were an anomaly. They are an anomaly as well. And may they, our parents, be an example for so many others, and for myself as a parent, of exactly what you said: do good work, be good people, serve your community, be healthy and happy, and that's all really that matters. Okay, so you're at Chez Panisse, and you came after Samin Nosrat, right?
I came after, yes. We did not.
Have there been any other Iranian Americans, do you know,
work there?
Yeah, in the kitchen there?
Truthfully, I don't know anybody prior to Samin or between us. I like and hope to think that there has been more Iranians after, not just the two of us, but I actually really don't know. And I've obviously, I heard of Samin when I was there, and then I love how I came to New York and came to here for college, and eventually years later I ended up doing a story with her, or on her, I should say, not with her, on her, when I was at Bon Appetit, and it was just such a amazing experience. And we were messaging each other a week ago, and she's just become she's been such an important figure in many different ways beyond food, that I really just have that utmost respect for, just like yourself.
Thank you. Were there any opportunities for you at Chez Panisse to maybe bring in some Persian cuisine techniques or flavors, or like a hit of something? I don't know. Was that available to you at Chez Panisse, or not at the time?
No, I mean, the truth is, I was the youngest one by years, and by a lot, actually, probably by like 9-10 years, and I think the cooks at Chez Panisse, they are maybe a little bit older than like the average cooks in other restaurants, and I think my very first job was prepping onions, making mirepoix, making sauces and stock, and eventually kind of taking on more responsibility. And I think also the food at Chez is so specific. I ate there 3 weeks ago, and they made the menu. The food was adapted from dishes from my book, and even that, I say it was adapted in the sense that it's still very Chez, first and foremost, and it's a very delicate hand. Nothing is overly spiced or in your face. And at the same time, I don't think Iranian food is necessarily very in your face. I think there's a subtlety and beauty of it, and that makes it very unique and distinct among the other kind of surrounding cuisines. But I would say because I was so young and I was very much on the lowest of the totem pole, it was very hard for me to kind of get myself in there.
So you go from Chez Panisse, you eventually move to New York, like you just said, you go to college. And I think one of the first things when I became, aware of the food world was I saw your falude was it Tasting Table, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a strawberry falude. And I want to say,
I cannot believe you're referencing that recipe. This is a recipe that probably maybe 5 people have seen, but that makes
it was one of them. And it was like 2015.
Yeah, it was
like that. 2014, 2015. Yes, I saw the recipe and my eyes just like bugged out because we weren't seeing a lot of we weren't seeing any Iranian cuisine covered at any outlets, really. So what are your thoughts? And then, of course, you go from Tasting Table, I believe it was to Saveur, and then to Bon Appetit, right? Mm-hmm. That's the trajectory.
It was actually Saveur, and then Saveur is actually, in a way, it was like Chez and Saveur are kind of my tentpoles of sorts. Chez when it came to the kind of restaurants and beyond, but Saveur was really the first editorial experience. And I came on as a test kitchen intern and then an editorial intern. And then they did a story on Iranian food. Anissa Lou, incredible writer, journalist. She wrote the story. She went to Iran. And they were going to have me adapt the recipes that she kind of wrote down. They ended up scrapping all of that. And they asked me to work with my mother and to come up with 10 recipes or so, 8 or 10 recipes. And so that was really the first time, and this is 2010, that I had to go a deep dive in Iranian cuisine in a very intimate way. And I should mention that I think prior to that moment, I was working in restaurants and kind of doing my own thing, trying to get away from Iranian food, very much so. I wanted to kind of figure out what are the dishes and flavors and cuisines that I was drawn to that was natural to my own cooking, not just the food that I grew up with. But I think that that story was so important because it reminded me how incredible the food that I grew up with was and the memories that I have. And Sabrina brought an article about my mother and myself and talking about how Iran was the hardest country they've ever kind of covered, just access wise, but that they were just, it was a very sweet kind of letter towards the two of us of being able to bring that food to life. And from there, I ended up doing those kind of pop-ups that Ali Reza mentioned earlier. And one thing led to another, went to Tasting Table and became a proper editor. And I was there for about 2 years before I went on to Bon Appetit.
And at Bon Appetit, you had the wonderful Nowruz spread, which was such a joy for all of us, if I can speak for all of us, Iranian, American, whatever, hyphenated people out there. And I think it was the same year that Nilu Motamed had her food and wine.
Yes.
And it was amazing. It was such a beautiful sight that these magazines, food magazines, are not just any food magazine, Food and Wine and Bon Appetit, they had these pages and pages spread on Iranian food, specifically for Nowruz. And it really was a moment. It really was, it felt like such a breakthrough. And I know that I'm always asked this question, so I will ask it of you. You've asked it of me. Why has it been so difficult for Iranian cuisine to have an impact? And do you see how it has changed? Let's say from that Saveur piece that you worked on with your mother to really up to this book, this beautiful book of yours, which does have Iranian inspired recipes in it. What is the change, or has it not changed that much? What do you see?
I definitely think there has been a shift. It's so funny that you mentioned the Nowruz spread, because I'll never forget. It was a breakthrough for me, not just as an Iranian American, but as also a breakthrough moment for me within Bon Appetit, because I think that's what allowed me to really stretch my arms out and be like, all right, I'm not messing around anymore. I'm staying put, and I'm going to I want to do work that I feel really passionate about. And I remember, they will not be named, but I remember a colleague of mine brought food and wine to me. And I said, they also did a Nowruz story. And I said, I think and I'll never forget it. And I said it in just the calmest way. I said, if there's 2 Nowruz stories happening at the same time, that is just a double win for the Iranian community. It's like,
and I'm just going to interject right there, because I have heard that numerous times from editors as well. We do a Thanksgiving story. Everybody does a Thanksgiving story every single year. We can do multiple Nowruz stories. We can do multiple Yalda stories. We can do multiple
100%
Khorish Qeimeh stories. We can do, it's time. And even amongst ourselves, I saw that as a win as well. It's not in competition of whose Nowruz story. We need more of our faces, more of our stories, everyone's recipe is going to be different anyways. Yes. So I agree with you. I thought that's why I was so excited that it was the same month and it was like everywhere. So
that consistency, that kind of year by year, having a more Nowruz stories, holidays that aren't just Thanksgiving or Christmas, Easter, they normalize these other important holidays, these significant holidays, part of other communities that have been living in the US for many, many years and generations. I think it's such an easy way for the editorial world to really kind of bring about and shed positive light to these cultures. To answer your question, I think Iranian food has become more, I don't like the word accessible, but I would say that it has become more apparent. I don't want to say trendy either, because I don't want it to be a trend. I don't want it to come in and then go in the next day. I think if anything, I give a lot of thanks to I'm going to say people within the Iranian community that have been doing the work, like yourself, like myself, like Samin, but also people outside of the editorial world. I think we have been seeing a new kind of generation of Iranian restaurants coming out in the Bay Area, in LA, New York City, in Detroit, Chicago. Restaurants that aren't just kebab houses, that are expanding the idea that Iranian cuisine is not just kebabs. And I think we all know this, the great food of Iran is very much in the home and starts at the home. And I think it's been hard to kind of bring, not impossible, but to bring light to those dishes, the khoreshes, the kind of the different types of polos, the certain side dishes, the different variations on kuku and side salads and mosques and all that. I think that has been something that I'm seeing more and more of, and I'm very, very happy about that. I think I want people to have an understanding of the Iranian dishes before there's a variation or there's a riff on it. You know, I think that is something I take very seriously. A lot of my food, it might have like one little thing different that maybe what I grew up with to make it my food, because I will admit that the Iranian recipes in this book are not necessarily my mother's recipes, but they're a kind of combination of what I grew up with and what's familiar and what I love, but also the kind of techniques that I've learned throughout my life and my career and the flavors that I'm drawn to. But I believe in providing the proper cultural context ahead of time before people want to go rogue and do their own thing.
What was the reception from the Iranian community to the Bonap, and which takes us to the kuku recipe in your book, because you talk about when you made that video at Bonap, making the kuku. How was that met? because you do make your kuku
A little differently.
a little different.
Yeah.
And you feel very, and I love that you feel very strongly about it and you don't back down from it.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that and I respect that. But how was that received within the Iranian American community?
Well, I think, there's two things I want to say. One, like, I think people were so, I have to say, happy to see Iranian food just in a national American publication. So from the people were very, very generous and sweet all over. I got messages that I could not even translate. They were in Farsi. My reading is not good. I think what really took it to another level though was the cuckoo video, because I think an article in a magazine or online is one thing, but I think video is something that people can see all over the world very easily. And I think that just brought about attention to Iranian cuisine, a dish that is very simple to make, and it's very much a kind of pantry dish too. Like we have some eggs, some kind of maybe allium oniony moment, plenty of herbs ideally. And I think people felt very empowered to kind of give it a try, and it really took off. And it was amazing to see how many non-Iranians would make this and bring it up. And then how many Iranians would say, oh my God, this is such an easier version. I now make my cuckoo this way, but I don't tell so-and-so, my mother, my father. But I will say, while I didn't feel it with this story, I do remember just receiving a lot of love. I think something that I am aware of is that, and this happens within communities that have been marginalized, is that we're very quick to kind of be critical or judgmental or towards others within our community. And that is something that I'm very, very sensitive of. And I only bring it up so that so as a reminder to kind of unlearn that behavior. Like, it's, even if another Iranian isn't cooking a certain thing the exact same way you grew up with, it's not wrong. It adds to the beauty of our culture, the uniqueness of our culture. And if anything, it will kind of expand it. As long as it's not, if you're adding 15 eggs and a half a cup of herbs and you're making it with extra virgin olive oil, and then you're putting like
I make my cuckoo with extra virgin olive oil.
I do it too. I don't mind that. But if you're putting like a tomato in there and you're making a frittata, then that's a whole different thing. But I think then top it with Parmesan, like it's a whole other beast.
Right.
Then we can't call that cuckoo. But I think generally we should look out for one another. I think it's really important.
And a reminder for all of us, and what I like to always think of as a spotlight on one is a spotlight on all. It really, truly is. And that's really the only way forward, and for the world to enjoy all the cuckoos out there and all the polos and all the cellos and all the khoresh and everything. You spoke of, so, this might not be your mom's or this is yours. I have to touch on, in the book, I truly get the sense of the love and respect that you have for your family. It comes through, even though it's not like a big part of like, this is my family, but it really comes through, and especially the love, admiration, and respect that you have for your mom. It's really, really touching. And what a source of, joy she has been in your life, from everything. Like, she was a Lancome representative, and I know you have your own skincare.
I have my own
routine
skincare. Yeah.
love.
There's no filter here, everybody.
You look amazing. And there's the great essay about you guys going shopping together and how she would always take a taste of everything, which I think speaks to most Iranian parents. There's always, you have to try that grape to see if it's crunchy enough. You have to have that olive. Now, it's not very safe in like COVID era and all of that, but that spoke to me, and I think it will to everyone. Go buy this book and read that essay, read all of the essays, but in particular that one. And then ripping the baguette, and of course you have to rip into that baguette. And then the topper was squeezing the lime on the pizza.
Yes.
And that spoke to me because in our house too, no matter what we have, my mom will always ask for the lemon at the table. Like
Yeah.
that hit of acid has to go on everything. Uh, how does your mom feel about this book and these recipes, Andy June? Do they say anything? Are they like those kind, like my parents, my mom, they're proud, but it's reserved a little bit.
I would say that the best way for me to say how proud she is that on her Instagram, which I love her so much, but she's gonna tease me. I know she's watching. If her Instagram feed right now is basically just a sea of photos of the cover of my book, and like I don't even know how many photos of like, I don't know where she even gets these photos of my book, or she screenshotted it from events that are in like where she's not even there. She's just seen where I'm tagged. So I have no doubt she's incredibly proud. And I'm very happy that she's proud of me. I'm very happy.
I want to get to questions, and we have about 5 minutes till we get to questions.
Wow.
I do want to ask you about the 2018 Bonap article that you wrote. I think this came after the Nowruz, and
Yes.
such a beautiful article. If you guys haven't read it, go online. It's called "I Hid Who I Was for So Long Until I Became a Cook." And this being the Pride edition, and this being Farhang and Andy Shajan. How did that article, that piece come about?
That was actually, I was approached to give a talk at a conference, a food conference called Bitten. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen anymore, but and I think I was talking with the founder, and we kind of landed on this idea of identity. I grew up, every generation has certain kind of struggles, and every individual has their own personal struggles. I grew up during a time post 9/11 where my adolescence, many years of my adolescence happened after 9/11. So it definitely was a kind of not a great period being Iranian or Middle Eastern, or just being part of the brown community. And I think we're very quick to forget when these things happen. Not Iranians, just in general, humans are very quick to forget about this stuff. And I was invited to give this talk, and it was very hard to kind of tap in. I worked on it for about 2 weeks, and I ended up giving a talk to an audience of, I don't know, maybe however many people. I guess a few people in the audience knew some of my colleagues at Bon Appetit, and they told one of my colleagues, like, Andy just gave a talk, he needs to turn this into an essay. And my colleague said, like, we heard that you did this talk, like, this needs to be an essay. And I said, no. They're like, why? I said, a talk is temporary. A talk is 100, 200, however many people they hear it, and they may tell others, but like it ends there, especially, because it wasn't recorded. I said, with a piece of writing, that lives forever. And I am not into that. And it took a little bit of coaxing and convincing. I eventually said yes. And I ended up writing an essay that was very hard, that touched on my identity and how my Iranianness and my sexuality and how they intersect. And I remember before we were going to go to press, to the printers, I was going to pull it out. I was ready to pull it out. And I remember my editor said, why, after all this work, why do you really, I'm like, it's like, we cannot do that. We have nothing to fill on these pages. And obviously I knew what I was doing. Like, I knew it was not okay. I said, I'll never forget. I said, why do I have to go there? I said, I felt very strong. I said, why do I have to go there? I said, why do I have to put myself in a vulnerable position? This is not fair to me. I said, why do I have to do that work? It didn't feel right for me. I wasn't ready, but I guess I was, and I gave in. And I will say it was definitely one of the most important things I've done in my career, because that essay took a completely different life on its own. I've never, ever thought that I would be writers that I admired, people outside of the food community reached out, people within the Iranian and outside of the Iranian community, the LGBTQ plus community, they reached out. And it really did take a life on its own. So I'm very proud that I did put that article out there, and I am happy that it's kind of has resonated with people.
And we are happy that you did that as well. And so are all those other, little Iranian American kids out there who may come across that article too. So thank you for doing that. We're going to go to Q&As, but before we do, really quick.
Yes.
Why this cover? Tell us about this cover, quick.
Yes. Okay. So this cover was shot by Michael Greer and Nicole Harriet, the photographers for this book. That was my very first choice. I wanted them to shoot this book. Now, choosing a cover is always a hard decision, and they shot all these beautiful photos that I love. But when we were thinking of the cover, it was very hard to put a plated dish of food or something with food to go with this title, The Cook You Want to Be. And this photo of me, where I'm doing some kind of task and my kind of head is kind of, cut, is a photo that the photographers took, but they took 7 years ago at my very first story of Bon Appetit. It was before I even thought of writing a book. It was my very, very first story at Bon Appetit. And they just casually shot this photo of me. And it became a kind of reference for me when I was developing the creative deck for the book, because I thought, this is me, but it really could be anybody. And it kind of can symbolize any person, any cook. And the idea of that ties more with the title than a plated dish. So it was a happy accident.
Amazing. I love that story. Nice. All right. I'm going to take it to the questions. We're getting a lot of, will there be a follow-up book? And have you thought of any other subjects? Will you ever write a Persian cookbook? We would truly appreciate one. So what's on the horizon?
Okay. Well, first and foremost, I see 79 participants. I hope that each 79 buys the book and spreads the word, because that will more likely allow me to take on future projects and actually continue writing books and do things. That is the big truth. I think it's and I have to say that because I think people think that it's easy, or that it's possible for me to just continue doing this. A big difference is people showing support and love and actually buying the book, supporting however you want to buy it. I mean, I like to say go through the independent bookstores. I feel strongly about that, but really however you want to purchase it, it makes a big difference. I think what's next is I will be continuing my book tour until early September. Plenty of live events, pop-ups, talks. I will be working on another book eventually. I will write an Iranian cookbook one day. I would love to do that. I will say it'll likely not be my next book, because I want to give it a lot more time and space. And I think with the next book, I already have like deadlines for that set already. But I think I have every intention of doing a tremendous amount of research and thinking to do an Iranian cookbook in the future for sure. But there will be newsletters. I will launch a newsletter likely in the fall, and I will likely do videos in the fall too. That'll come back again. I know I have been.
Lucky us.
Thank you.
Lucky us. Getting lots of questions of what is your all-time comfort food? What is your favorite Persian food, Iranian food?
I will say favorite. Iranian food is probably I still think it's like kufte or abgusht. Like it's really, but with everything, you know, I want like sabzi khordan, I want seer, torshi, different types of torshi. I want medoug. I want like the whole setup. I like Iranian dishes where there's a lot of moving parts. But those are the two that I tend to crave the most. I love warm sabzi, I love fesenjoon, I love al balu polo, but I think those two are probably my favorite. With sangak bread, it makes me very happy. But generally comfort food outside of Iranian, I love like buttered sushi rice with nori and kimchi pickles, and like an egg. Like that is kind of something that I tend to eat a lot of, just
Which
rice.
has the Iranian touch there too.
Yes,
like
very much so. Exactly.
rice with kimchi, you know,
Yes.
you've got a little bit of the torshi element there.
Exactly.
Okay, so what I'm also seeing a lot of questions about, what do you think about adding personal touches to these beloved recipes, and why do you think that older generation Iranians are so hesitant or reluctant to have these recipes altered, changed?
Well, I think in general in life, I think people don't love change to beyond food, just in general. Like we get comfortable, and I think as we kind of get older and we evolve, we kind of get set in our ways. So it's natural for people to not want to see certain dishes evolve or change. The truth is, I don't necessarily think I would never want to dilute an Iranian dish or Iranian cuisine. I think for me, it's about expanding the cuisine to people outside of the Iranian community. And if that is telling people to not have to soak their rice for so long, or maybe even skip it this time, or to chop the herbs, although I don't think I've ever done this, in a food processor for their sabzi polo, that is more likely for them to actually grind their saffron to a powder rather than with their fingers. So there has to be, I find as a recipe developer, to get people to kind of try a new ingredient or a new technique, you have to adjust. No, I think even outside of Iranian food, people are very rare to kind of try a recipe that has all these ingredients that are harder to find and then all these new techniques. You kind of have to pick and choose. Either it's a new ingredient, super simple technique, or it's very technical and the very simple ingredients. The longest recipe in the book is actually my cello recipe, because it has, and it's the shortest ingredient list. You know, I think there's just salt, rice, butter, and saffron, and that's it, and water. 5 ingredients, but it's the longest because I wanted people to have a deeper understanding of why we do each thing, why we rinse the rice, why we salt it so much beforehand, so that the rice allows to soak up that salty water, why we steam, why we poke the holes, all those things.
Yeah, and I think there's also, to even the older generation, everyone has their own way of doing something. There is no one way. And you'll even hear this around the family. No, that's not my way, and our way. So I think we have to be mindful and generous with each other, with ourselves, to allow, like you said, this is the whole point, is, at least I think, for all of us, is to get everyone else cooking this food. That's the main goal. We want this to become part of, like, the Sunday night spaghetti and meatballs. Let's do polo khoresh, right? So in order to do that, we have to be generous and give over a little bit, and welcome everyone to our table, because we're Iranians and we're so good at that. We're so hospitable. Maybe one last question. Andy June, is there anything you would have changed in your journey? Thank you both for the insightful conversation.
Change in my journey?
Yeah.
You know, it's so easy to kind of say, look back, and I think I had, there was definitely a moment in my life recently where my last place where I worked at went through so many transitions, and it was very public, and it was a very hard thing. I think people obviously within that space working together, but then also people to see it. It was very hard. And I think if you asked me maybe 2 years ago, I would have been like, oh, I would have changed so many things. But at this very moment, I am very thankful for everything that has happened, for everything that has made me uncomfortable, that has made me deeply insecure, that has made me anxious, that has empowered me, that has made me evolve, that has made me instill a deeper curiosity. I know it maybe sounds cliche, but I really don't have any regrets. I think I worried that it would kind of put me on a different path, and if I would pick out those things that were uncomfortable, then I probably would be less evolved and less well-rounded and probably less strong. So no regrets.
We have one comment here that says, I believe you both need to have your own PBS TV cooking show. So here's my little bit here. So I mentioned that Andy's name is actually Andy Chez. My name is actually Naz Gol. No one really calls me Naz outside of, in my family, I'm either Nazi or Nazgul. So we do the Andy Chez Nazgul show. That's
I'm for it. And I love that they said PBS and not Food Network. So I'm very for that.
We'll do it. If we want to cook 3 things to start off with, the cook you want to be, what should we do? Where should we go? Because you can, I'm already ready to go, but
I'll name one Iranian dish, but I won't name all of them because I want to give love to the other recipes as well.
Yes.
I think one of them is a very, very, very easy one. It's in the snack chapter. It's a riff on noon paneer and sabzi khordan, and it's just doing paneer feta cheese with the nano dough, and you just sizzle that with the gerdu, and you have these toasted walnuts and mint, and you pour that over, and that's like your snack. It's super easy, but it really is delicious. 2 others I would say is the pistachio, the torn plum and pistachio cake. I think it's just something that a lot of Iranians and just anybody really would love. And the thing is, you could do it with plums, but you could do it with really any kind of juicy fruit. And then the third would be I feel like because people love lamb in this room, the shawarma spice lamb chops with the pickled salad is very delicious. But if you don't like lamb, you could do that with that marinade on tofu, on chicken, on any kind of meat. It works really well, that marinade.
Getting so many congratulations to you in this Q&A, Andy. Ali Reza Jun, if you want to come back, but I want to personally thank you, Andy, for the beautiful book, for the beautiful recipes, but more importantly, for sharing your story. We're all grateful and lucky.
Thank you so much. It really feels like a full circle moment here, and I'm thankful for you and for Ali Reza John just to kind of welcome me to the space, and it really means the world.
Thank you, both of you. Thank you, Andy John, for this beautiful book. And I have to say, I know a thing or two about sexy centerfolds because I used to work for Playboy in another life, but this centerfold is so sexy.
Right?
Isn't that like the sexiest centerfold? And another item that I had to share was this beautiful falude. Yeah. So another sexy shot. I really highly recommend the book, and I'm not just saying it because you guys are here, but it's beautiful. And also I love that it's not all Iranian recipes. It's really laced with Iranian influence throughout the book, in addition to some traditional recipes, but it's a beautiful book. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Naz, for this great conversation. Again, I certainly worked up an appetite after listening to you both talk, and I'm sure our audience has as well. So I'm off to lunch after this. On behalf of myself and everyone here at Farhang Foundation, I have to really thank you both for what you do day in and day out in showcasing Iranian culinary influences to the world. Just a reminder that Andy's book, The Cook You Want to Be, is now out and available for purchase at all book retailers. You may also access the book's purchase link by visiting farhang.org/Andy. So be sure to pick it up. It's a great gift. And of course, Naz's beautiful book, Bottom of the Pot, is also available at all book retailers. And if you don't have that book already on your shelf, you're certainly missing out. It's not only beautiful, but it's just magnificent. We thank our dedicated audience for joining us today and remind you always to check farhang.org or join our mailing list for all the latest talks and upcoming programs and events. And we thank you for joining us today and spending your afternoon with us. And again, thank you to Naz for hosting this event. We're delighted to have you, and thank you to Andy, wishing you lots more success with this book and everything else you're doing, and congratulations to being on the New York Times bestselling list already. So bravo, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.